Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. On the program today, we intend to take a look at the move by the Southwest governors here in Nigeria to maintain a common front at taking, some bold steps at creating regional development plans for not only their state, but also see how they can work together as a team. Various steps were identified during their meeting last week here in Lagos, and they intend to follow through some of those issues, of course, ranging from insecurity to food, inflation, and of course, how to work with the federal government at stabilizing the economy more, especially on their part. We do know that many have also said for Nigeria to again go back to all of those reformative processes, there might be the need to go back to regional form of government. Is this a way for the governors? Are the governors realizing this and, this path that they have chosen to toe, will it also be a path to economic prosperity of the states in the Southwest? That is a conversation this morning. We do have our guest in the house this morning. He's an economist and he's also the chair of ACT. I hope I'm going to get that. Yes. ACT Network. Okay, thank you, Mr. Segun Shokweton, for joining us on the program this morning. So let's start this way. Yes, we do know that sometime last year, the governors decided to come together in the Southwest to form a common platform for themselves to take a look at how they can progress as one, even though they represent different political parties. But here, the common front is that we are elected to, cater to the needs of our people. So leaving all parties aside, let's work as individuals. So regional system of government and also looking at how they can all harness their various strengths and weaknesses towards integrating the Southwest as one. For you, let's look at it. Is this a step in the right direction? And are you positive that this particular step is able to create that formidable front that the governors are yearning for?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I absolutely love it.
Okay.
I think that while I was preparing for this show, I just looked around the other parts of the country, and I found that, to my dismay, that only the Southwest actually has this type of well-articulated plan, well-articulated agenda, that actually has institutional frameworks built around it. What the president did, with this new set of ministries, where he created the Regional Development Ministry, and then you have the commissions, the different regional development commissions under that. I guess it's getting that from what is happening in the Southwest. And I think it's absolutely a brilliant idea.
Okay.
Because I think that, generally speaking, conventional wisdom will tell you that there's safety in numbers.
Right.
The bigger we are, the larger we are, the better we can do together. You can harness economies of scale, and all of that. I can go on and on with regards to the benefits of integrating. All over the world, if you look around you, you find that integration is the way that people are going. You can see what's happening in the EU, where they've integrated so much that it's almost one country.
Right.
They've got single visa arrangements, they've got a single currency, and all of that. We've tried to do it in ECOWAS, and we haven't quite gotten it right. So I think it's the way to go. The conversation about how well it has worked, what the governors are doing, what can be done, and all that, may be a different conversation, but I think it's absolutely, definitely steps in the right direction. You can remember the Amotekun thing as well. Again, only the Southwest has been able to do something like this successfully, and it's actually functional. You actually see that security organization well-equipped, and you see them around. Just as an ordinary Nigerian, every now and then you see an Amotekun vehicle driving by and the officials moving around. And you can see from the results, Southwest, in spite of all of the security challenges across the country, remains largely the safest and the most peaceful. And I think that's not a coincidence. So I think it's a good thing, and I think these governors have to be commended.
Okay, let's speak to some of those issues that were raised during this meeting. They promised to establish regional security and establishment of joint security surveillance. And of course, they also promised to tame food inflation. Some of these agenda, what are the implications for the Southwest, and how do you think they should go about it in such a way that people will start feeling the impact without wasting time?
You know, I mean, I think that the starting point is to think it. You know, if you can think it, then you can do it. That truism goes. And I think it's also important to emphasize that the position I'm taking is not necessarily a tribalistic or selfish one. It's actually driven from the idea that like we did in the past, you know, you recall, you know, the old stories in the 60s and the 70s where the regions competed against each other and drove national development. I think that if the regions can come together, Southwest, Southeast, the North Central in particular, and then maybe the Northwest, the Northeast have their own particular challenges and they've got to deal with their security issues, you know, but if all these regions could come together, then you can leverage the comparative advantages that exist in those localities as a result of the contiguous nature of the states, and then, you know, work on those things together and develop it together. What they can achieve together will be far more than what each individual state can do on their own. You know, so I think it's important to contextualize this so that people don't listen and think, oh, you're just thinking about the Southwest, you are tribalists. It's not about that. It is about Nigeria. I think Nigeria will develop faster if we're able to organize ourselves the way the Southwest has done. Talking about how quickly, you know, what can the governors do?
And the agenda on food inflation,
and the agenda,
security.
You know, so far, I think on security, we touched on that, you know, while I was talking. I think they've done well. We can do better, and you can see that they've also talked about a surveillance,
yes,
a joint surveillance.
Leveraging on technology.
Yeah, leveraging on technology, drone networks, you know, maybe satellite imagery, and what have you, you know. So I think that's a good step. They should go ahead and implement that quickly. For food, I think that's probably a bit more complicated because can we attain self-sufficiency in the Southwest, for example? I think a lot of food that we eat in the Southwest, a lot of it still comes from the North. From the North Central and the Northwest. So the ability to control food inflation may not be entirely in our hands. The insecurity that we spoke about earlier, you know, in those places will affect supply. Road infrastructure in particular and rail infrastructure are also major mitigating factors that will prevent us from being able to fully harness, you know, the abundant resources, agricultural resources that we have as a country, and ensuring that food is not scarce. So the inflation, you know, for the Southwest to control that, we have to be more strategic in developing the capacity. We have the land. It's not as if we don't have land, you know. So I think the governors need to do more in encouraging mechanization, in encouraging the inflow of private capital. You know, this is very, very crucial. Getting, you know, investors to bring their monies in to set up processing centers, to set up silos, you know, provide farming inputs to farmers to ensure that we can do better, we can become more productive with our land. Right. If we do that, then we can control the inflation narrative. If we don't, then we're going to depend on whatever happens across the country.
Still staying with you know, issues around food security. Part of what they also talked about will be the creation of food hubs across you know, the Southwest. We know that Lagos actually has tried it, and so Lagos might be able to give the Lagos example how this will work. But for you, because again, sometimes, you know, when you're doing something solely, you have the control over it. Yeah. But this time around, if it's going to be a joint theme, a teamwork, what are some of the things that you foresee that may be, you know, some challenges that the governors need to look ahead and also overcome those obstacles if indeed some of these ideas, especially with the creation of food hubs, if they will work and if they are sustainable?
I mean, they can work, but like you said, and again, kudos to the Lagos State government, you know, for having led this charge. I had had cause in the past year to continue to reference the Oúnjẹ Èkó scheme, you know, and the fact that it's a food subsidy program. Unfortunately, it ran its challenges. Right. So I think the lessons to be taken by the region should come from what we saw happen in Lagos.
Okay.
It's the fact that whatever system that we're putting together, whatever framework we're putting together, in any sphere, not just food, we have to take into account the Nigerian factor. I know people don't like hearing that, but it's a reality, sadly, because of our common history. There are things that, there are behavioral patterns that we have developed as a people.
Right.
That I don't think Nigerians are bad. I think it's just a result
culture of
it's a result of our experience.
Okay.
It's a result of the journey we have traveled so far. And where we are today is that because there are no consequences for bad behavior, people tend to behave badly.
Right.
So you set up a beautiful scheme like Onje Eco, and people abuse it. People try to corner the resources. People try to take advantage of the subsidies. People take the subsidies without passing it on to the consumer. So I think the Southwest governors can look at that scheme and take it apart and look at where there were challenges. What can we do differently? What can we do better? Is 25% subsidy even enough, given the food inflation, what it's doing right now? Should we look, for example, at what Lagos is also trying to do now, which is to take the subsidies away from the end products, the end food products, and take it back the value chain and give it to the farmers in terms of inputs and all of that. That's another possible approach. So there is a lot that can be done, but whatever we do, I think the most important thing is that we must build in fail-safes, mechanisms that will prevent abuse, mechanisms that will ensure consequence when people do try to abuse, because they will try. A lot of the good things that whether government or private organizations and individuals try to do get derailed as a result of this culture, of just wanting to cut corners and all that. So we have to take that into consideration in whatever program that we put together.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate the fact that you mentioned road infrastructure the other time.
Yep.
How about these southwestern states coming together and, of course, invest more in transportation? It could be rail, it could be by road, so that each state can be connected to one another. And for that agricultural plan to actually be impactful, they need to be connected somehow. And rail is faster than road, so to say, and safer.
Absolutely.
So should they be looking in that direction?
I mean, it has to even be multimodal, The other Southwest people will try not to be jealous because I keep talking about Lagos. But honestly, we just have to give kudos to the Lagos State government. Administration after administration, they've been implementing these policies. It may not have worked as well as some of us would like to see it work, but you can see the thinking behind it. So multimodal transportation, so if we talk about integration, whether from agricultural perspective or just from the movement of goods and services and people, is critical. Right. Imagine if we had the blue line, the red line, the green, orange, and all of that Lagos State is implementing now. Imagine if we extended that and it could go all the way to Osogbo, and it could go all the way to Ibadan, and and maybe Ekiti, Ado, and it's all because these places are not really far. Let's they're not far. You travel when the roads were still decent. By road to Ekiti will be about three and a half hours
max.
Now maybe 6 hours, maybe 7 hours because of bad roads and insecurity and all of that. If you can convert that to a train ride, you would do it in an hour. Imagine if I could leave, because if you can commute in an hour, then I can live anywhere in the Southwest and work in Lagos. And I can live in Lagos and work anywhere in the Southwest. I can live in Lagos and be an urban citizen, but have farms, for example, in Ekiti or in Ondo, wherever it is. I can go and develop cocoa plantations in Ondo, for example, but I live in Lagos because the rail network is there. And then, of course, the movement of goods and services. Let's not forget that Lagos is a port, is a coastal city.
Right.
So there's the port as well. So the benefit of trying to integrate all of this is just humongous. And I'm quite a bit surprised that we haven't seen more effort in that regard. I remember, was it the administration of Governor Fashola or maybe Ambode, I'm not sure. There was this conversation between Ogun State and Lagos State talking about the rail system, trying to get.
I think even when the red line was commissioned or inaugurated, Dr. Dapo Abiodun also did say that there is that possibility that we will take it from Agbado to that
Abeokuta or
and then, so if it is done, I think Osun can also take it from take that area and take it to that.
I mean, it would be amazing if we can achieve this infrastructure integration. Because when you now factor in the port, what that means is that the economic potential of having a seaport would extend not just to Lagos, but then to the rest of the Southwest, and development will follow it. You know.
Right. So again, let's talk about one other thing that the governors did talk about. Though they expressed confidence on the economic policies of Mr. President, but they're also looking at how they can complement that and say how they also can cascade it to the very barest minimum. So if you look at, on the scale of preference, the economic policies at the federal level, if the state also drive theirs and also carry the local government along, are we also able to have a template in the Southwest where we know that there's that possibility that whatever is happening in Lagos could also be happening in Oyo, could also be happening in Ekiti. So it doesn't seem like only those in Lagos are enjoying some kind of governance or some kind of benefit. So the state governors, they also need to start looking at, beyond just rhetoric, also formulating policies that will cut across the Southwest in terms of economic policies.
Absolutely. You know, if you take each one of the 6 states, each one has its own area of advantage. For some it's agriculture, for some it's solid minerals. Osho State, you know, massive gold deposits. In Ogun State, we've got bitumen and all of that. And then Ondo, Ekiti, let's talk about tourism. You know, fantastic, amazing sights. The rolling hills, you know. Every time I travel to Ekiti, look, I mean, it's breathtaking. Seeing those mountains and seeing the clouds connect with the houses that are on top of the mountains. It's beautiful. Every time I travel, I just keep taking pictures. I have so many pictures of the Ekiti hills on my phone, you know, taking over the years. And it's all just sitting there. It's all just sitting there. What are we doing to harness these things? What are we doing? So I think what the governors need to do is to look at each state and its comparative advantage together. Okay. I'm saying that as a region, the Dawn Initiative, you know, we've got this Dawn agenda, you know. Let's sit down as Dawn and look at each state and look at what advantages each state has, how we can develop those advantages and then connect them. Okay. So tourism, Lagos, you know, Lagos is Lagos. It's got its beach, coastal lines, and all of that. But as you travel inwards, there are so many different things that people can go to look at. Can we develop policy frameworks that would encourage private sector participators to bring in big money, good money, and develop resorts in those places? Develop them to global standards. Spend money on marketing it, you know, pushing those places on international platforms. Announce it on CNN, you know, and all of that. Bring international tourism into these places, knowing that those places are also connected to Lagos, so it becomes easy for people to access it, you know, because, you know, no tourists will come to Nigeria if they're afraid of being kidnapped, you know. So can we just find a way to provide a policy framework that will take advantage of all of those things? Look at the gold mines in Osun State. How can we put in policies that will ensure that we move beyond the illegal mining to actually bring in investment again, to develop those mines and harness the resources that are just sitting on the ground, under the ground in those places, you know, working hand in hand with the you know, the other states within the region. So there's so much. It's really incredible how we're not taking advantage of what God has given us.
And those things that you've talked about are also able to shore up the revenue of the state, because then you don't need to wait hand in cap for the federal allocations.
You know, so if we take the conversation to the fiscal side, then all of this would significantly win us. Imagine, look at Lagos now. I mean, if FAC comes and it doesn't come, you know, it doesn't matter to Lagos. The IGR of Lagos is more than enough to take care of its running expenses, its overheads, its recurrent expenditure. So if FAC comes, fine. If it doesn't come, it's just additional money. So how can we get other states to get to that, you know, that level of financial independence as well? It's all about harnessing these things. It's about thinking. So I must say that we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. The state governors are not doing enough.
I do agree with you that they can complement one another. Imagine Lagos wanting to construct roads, or going to Ondo to go and get bitumen.
Exactly.
Of course, they can get it cheaper.
Exactly.
But what role will the coastal road, which is still under construction, play in this agenda of the Southwest governors?
I guess you know, it connects Lagos. I think Lagos, Ondo.
Yeah.
Which other? I think it's Lagos and Ondo that lies on the coastal area. So it connects that, and then of course you can, because that connection happens, of course you can feed off that into the other parts of the region. So the coastal highway is whatever advantages that Nigeria stands to gain, the region would also stand to gain. It's interesting that it's moving as fast as it started. I hope it can continue. And I hope we see it to the end, you know, in spite of all of the controversies that I'm not particularly happy about some of the things that has happened, you know, along the way in that story. I think that we didn't need to destroy value the way we did in trying to implement it. You know, again, I move around a lot. So the tourist activity along that axis that has been destroyed is completely unnecessary. And I wish we hadn't done that. And we've got to look at, as we're developing, to ensure that we minimize damage, destruction that happens along the way. But the coastal road is definitely a game changer if it gets implemented, you know, to the end, and I think the Southwest will definitely benefit from it.
Okay. Now that the Southwest governors are, you know, now again maybe on the same pedestal concerning growth, economic development, and all, what will they be adding to the governors forum? They do have a forum, and so if again we've established the fact that Nigeria developed better during the regional system of government, is there anything the governors at their own regional level can begin to introduce to the bulk of other governors on the side of the governors forum? So again, development does not also stay on just the Southwest alone. Absolutely. If they're able to cascade to other governors, then we can have all-round development across Nigeria, because we have a lot of people moving into the Southwest, especially Lagos, on a daily basis. And this is because other places are also suffering some kind of neglect. So what should the Southwest governors also be interested in on also bringing on board at the larger forum of the Governors Forum?
I think it's in our self-interest, enlightened self-interest as a region, to ensure that what you speak about happens. Because if Lagos continues to develop alone, or as we're seeing now, you know, the Southwest is coming together, and development will follow. Because like I always say, you just have to think it first. If you can think it and imagine it, it will happen. Right. You know, so eventually it will happen. It might be fast, it might be slow, but it will happen. You know, so if the Southwest then develops, you know, and catches up to a certain degree with Lagos, and we leave the rest of the country back, then, you know, we will eventually suffer. You can't be the only one prospering in the midst of, you know, an ocean of poverty. You know, they will come after you one way or the other, and it will affect you negatively. So it is in our interest to ensure that we drag and encourage the other regions to follow. And I think that onus might well lie with the president. So the Governors Forum, they can have these conversations, but I think there's got to be a framework for it. Like I said before, I like the fact that we've got the Odua Investment Company, and we've got the Dawn Commission. You know, that. And
now we do also have the Southwest Development Commission.
So the Dawn Commission obviously will have to work, probably merge in some way with the Southwest, so that you don't have duplications, right? So that type of framework, the president has already put it together. Can we now begin to ensure that there is cooperation in terms of ideation to push the ideas, whatever the things that we are pursuing as a region? We have to make sure we compel the other regions, if we have to have those same types of conversations, to begin to drive the type of integration that we're talking about in those places as well, so that at the end of the day, Nigeria develops together. Because if we don't,
the pressure will come.
We will come back to deal with the situation.
It's a matter of time. We'll have to deal with it.
Okay, the forum also commended Mr. President for introducing the student loan, and they urged students from the southwestern part of the country to tap into this. In the area of education, do you think there's any form of collaboration that this southwest state can also have?
Education is a big deal, and it's a big problem. And I think that it's something that we need to face. It's expensive, you know. It's expensive to educate people, and it's expensive. It's even more expensive not to
be educated.
It's even more expensive not to. I mean, what we're experiencing as a country with Boko Haram and all of the challenges that has brought is as a result of a lack of education. That's the primary driving factor. It's poverty and illiteracy that drove Boko Haram to where it is today. It wouldn't have expanded as much if the youth were gainfully employed. So it's absolutely critical that the Southwest develops an agenda to make education available, if possible, for free. You know, it's something up to university level, like we had before. And I tell you, all across the world, in societies that do well, the societies we like to benchmark and, you know, compare to ourselves, education is free for the citizens. I was surprised. I thought that in the United States, for example, the education is free to secondary school level, but I found that for citizens in most states in the United States, if you're a citizen in that state, your children can go to state-owned universities for free. Right. State-owned universities. So, say Texas, for example, University of Texas, you know, what they call them, UTEX or something. It's an Ivy League school. It's very expensive, $60,000 per annum as school fees. You know, how many people can afford that even in the United States? But then they've got local colleges and universities that you would also get your first degree, 4-year degree program, and it's free or extremely subsidized. We have to think along those lines in the Southwest to ensure that we don't leave education to the private people only, because it's expensive. How many people can afford 1.5 million, 2 million that private universities are charging?
Some of these state universities are expensive.
Yes, and now, so now that brings me to the student loan conversation, and I think that it's one of the areas. So I'm a social democrat at heart. I think that capitalism is good, democracy is important, but you must be welfareist in your approach to governance. So for me, the removal of subsidies across board, we've got to be careful with it. So now what we've done with education, as you were alluding to, federal government universities and state government universities are now they're getting out of reach of the poor, because you know, school fees in Unilag, yes, it used to be 60,000, you know, 80,000 per annum. The first time I discovered this, and I'm talking of just 3-4 years ago, I was shocked. You know, I said, wow, is this cheap? But now we're getting to 300, 400,000 levels, 500,000 levels. And the reason being, the government says student loans will be available to subsidize, to help, you know. But the student loan scheme has not really taken off fully. There's a lot of teething problems. People are complaining that they can't get the money, they can't access it. And then even the qualification criteria is very difficult. You find that the people that really need it can't qualify for it because the income required for them to demonstrate, they don't have it. So we need to rethink that area to ensure that we don't squeeze people out of school inadvertently and create more illiteracy and all of the problems that go along with that.
Right. So again, some of those policies created at the federal level, what should the role of the states be at ensuring that there's better understanding on the part of the people? Because I know that when NELFund started, it was state universities could not have access to it before it was expanded. Mr. Sawyer had also confirmed that the Southwest, were the number of those accessing the loan from the Southwest was little. And so if, you know, we do now have a governors forum and they are commending NELFund, what should their role be at ensuring that students from the Southwest also take full advantage of what NELFund has to offer, even though, you know, at the initial stage and there are still teething problems? But if they are not accessing the loan, then you can't have yourself to blame if you can't get it.
I mean, so obviously we've got to push the narrative a bit more. Each governor of each state should be getting maybe their ministries of education to go on enlightenment campaigns, go to the universities and let people know that this thing is available. And I also think that beyond the federal government loan, how much can the federal government do? You know, really, how much can they do? Nigeria is a huge country. The 54 trillion naira budget that some people think is big is small.
It's small.
It's nowhere near enough.
Plenty people don't want to hear you say that.
Enough. It's nowhere near enough. I tell you, we should be talking budgets of 500 trillion naira, as a starter.
But
because if you look at
Nigeria's economy.
yes, I know. So the reason I say that is the subnationals must also take their fair share of the responsibility of driving economic development, of driving the fiscal side. We talked about IGR earlier. They need to develop ways of growing their own revenue base so that their budgets can be bigger. So the Southwest should come together and create their own Southwest NEL Fund, their own version, so that state universities and even at the lower cadres, people can also benefit from that. So let's take some of the burden off the federal government because, honestly, it's Nigeria is too big for the center alone to manage. And that's why I'm still waiting for this president to push the devolution argument he was pursuing before he became president. Because that's the solution to our development issues. The federal government cannot do it. We're too big. So I think that the state governors need to come together and mimic. We need to just look at what's happening at the federal level and mimic it. So there's no
sorry,
problem
just
with
to add to that. So in your own opinion, the governors at the moment are really not doing enough.
They're not doing enough.
Okay, so we need to start holding them by the after saying that, what, you guys need to do
absolutely more. When I was thinking about this, as I was preparing for this program, I was thinking, we need to take attention of the federal government. And I said to myself, no, we need to focus attention on the federal government, but also focus at least as much attention. If you can't do more, because you only have so much energy. But you must focus enough attention on the states as well. The state government and the state governors are getting away with blue murder. The things that happen at the state level, they're just simply not accountable to anybody. So all the NGOs, including, I'm also an CSO president. We're not doing enough. Everybody is just talking about the president and the ministers, wicked this, wicked that. What's happening with the commissioners at the state level? So we need to take the conversation as a people, as Nigerians, and remember that when you say the economy of Nigeria, the federal government accounts for just less than 50%.
Yeah, about 50%.
Even the budgets, we talk about the 54 trillion naira budget. But that's not actually the budget of Nigeria. That's the budget of the federal government. The state governments combined also do another 30 trillion or thereabouts. So how can we bump up that number? Each state, imagine if each state could do, say, 10 trillion or 20 trillion, and we've got 36 states. Then we're talking national budget, not the federal budget now, but the national budget of maybe 200 trillion. Now we're talking. So we need to look more at the governors and tell them that we need more from them. They're not doing enough.
Okay. It's sad that the governors are getting more money now, yet they are doing less. And what are those philosophies of Awolowo in those days, Baba Jakonde, the other time we celebrated him on this program, that these governors can take to improve the Southwest region, especially now that we have a law in place that states that state government can also generate power on their own.
Right.
Absolutely. So talking about Awolowo, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and
they made less of money, but their impact is still there till tomorrow.
But then the population at that time.
The population may have been fewer or smaller, but the mindset and approach was developmental from those people, from Awolowo and their likes at that time. If you look at the agenda for him, it was human development. So you talk about education, healthcare, and then social services. Those basic things. Because if a human being if he's doing well as a person, then he will be a more productive member of society, and that society will do better. So we need to borrow that leaf, look into education. How can we make it free? It has to be free all the way, completely, in all its ramifications. I think Southwest states are trying, but we have to do better. We need to look at healthcare. Our healthcare delivery is nowhere near where it ought to be. The primary health centers that are under the control of the local governments, the secondary as well, under the states, we've got to develop them more. Again, you've got to give the kudos that Lagos deserves to it, because if you go to the general hospitals that belong to the state, across the state, they're not too bad. They've been ramped up, especially in terms of the physical infrastructure. We still have to do better with the service culture, amongst the workers, which dovetails into their welfare. You know, all of those things, they are all intricately connected, and I think that the governors have to do more to ensure that these development indicators can be pumped up. So I would like to see a Dawn Commission that sets out the HDIs, healthcare, access to water, education, food, and so on and so forth. Take the numbers for the Southwest and develop a plan, a 5-year or a 10-year plan, and where those numbers will be at the end of that 5-year or 10-year period. It will be beautiful, because if we can then follow that through, even if we don't hit those targets, we'll definitely make a lot of progress.
Okay. And power, I mentioned power. How can
and electricity. So for electricity, the Nigerian situation is kind of complicated, because we do have the national grid that is, I think, is irredeemable. I think it's irredeemable. I'm sorry. I'm a realist. I don't think there is anything.
So you think this Abiko is, I mean, it's just,
I think we should junk it.
Just
throw it away. And talk to the regions. You know, so beautiful thing that this law has been done, where the states are now
empowered
to generate. Which state has done anything about that since that law came on board?
Yeah, I think only in Abia.
I think Abia State, you know, with
Lagos
what's happening, Lagos has been doing it for a while. For a while, you know, we've got
with
sections. Some people don't know that there are, you know, huge chunks of Alausa, you know, where
Lagos Island, where
power failure doesn't happen because they are empowered independently. So we need to now look at that and look more at the regional grids and mini grids. We need to find a way to encourage estates to generate power, especially renewables, and then connect them. Take the excess, connect it onto a grid, and push it to people where others don't have enough that are not generated. I think that's the solution to Nigeria's power situation. So this integration issue is actually critical to it. So imagine if we could do that in the Southwest, and they can do that in the Southeast, they do it in the South-South, you know, and then all of us then put those little grids together. Then you have a new national grid. This is our national grid that we're doing. Imagine we issued a contract to Siemens.
Right, and that contract has
under Buhari's administration.
Yes, it's just been going on.
It's just there. And that contract was supposed to renew the transmission network of TCN and all that. Nothing has happened.
Okay, Segun, we need to go, but before we allow you go, just a very 30-second question here. Even in the midst of all of the things that we're seeing in Nigeria, just last week our lawmakers again had the idea to again look at the creation of additional 31 states. In your own opinion, is that viable?
When I heard that news, I said they should flog all of them. With all due respect to them. Like, what? Are we serious?
Are we serious?
We're saying there are states that cannot survive without FAC. In fact, the FAC is, you know, there are statistics all over the place now where the cost of the state governor's office is more than their FAC allocation.
Can you imagine?
And
here we are
want to
talking
create
about
31 more states. Are we joking?
Are we joking? Thank you. Segun Soputa, thank you so much for finding time to be here on the program.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's the much we take on this side of the table this morning. We'll take a break. When we return, Adebinkwe will be here with our guest on Her Conversation.